Hey, it's Tidal, and this is my guide to Mythic Sarkareth for melee DPS and Fury Warriors. First off, when talking about Spec of playing Fury versus Arms, Arms is going to be a little bit more boss damage, but Fury is going to be more ad damage, meaning that you're going to be more capable of helping your raid team get through the second phase seamlessly and into phase 3, where the bulk of the progression usually happens. This first part in the opening, I'm just planning out my defensives. I used Spell Reflect on that first Glittering Surge, and I'm going to be using my Enraged Regen on this first breath because we have a lot of our healers clearing this breath. This breath is one of the first breaths that we have to bait as melee DPS. We decided to bait our breath behind the fire bombs, and we had our healers clear in this breath. One little micro optimization that we're doing as melee just before this moment, you can see most of our melee are on the right side, on the inside of the boss. This is because we're trying to bait the fire swirlies on this side so that we can dodge them and dodge them into the direction of where we want to bait the breath. That way we can maintain uptime on the boss while baiting the breath and not have to dodge fire swirlies away from the boss. Again, for this first Mass Disintegrate and Breath, I'm using Enraged Regeneration. I'm using it here, and then I use it for our bigger clear later at about 1:30 into the fight. We're getting a Holy Symbol from our Holy Priest, which means that I'll get a second use. This second breath needs to be baited at the range. This is where all of us clear the fire debuff on us. For the first phase of Sarkareth, we all get 2 stacks of Oppressive Roar, and we need to clear both with the Fire Breath and with Disintegrate at some point during the fight. So this Fire Breath is pointed directly at the range. We drop AMZ. This is a lot of personals, and I'm just using Spell Reflect and my health potion here to live because I want to save regen for later for a more scary part of the fight. This is technically where the most raid damage is actually happening because we are all clearing, but because we have so many cooldowns stacked here to defend against it, it really doesn't feel scary to me, which is why I felt that it was safe to delay my regen to be used at a later time. A quick note about the Disintegrate lines here. Even though the graphic appears to go beyond the player that is targeting, it will not actually clear a debuff off of the person who's being targeted. You can see some of our melee are going to be as close to the arrow as possible to make it easier for other melee to position around them and not get their debuff cleared. And that's also important. Not only does Disintegrate hurt pretty badly, but then you get a dot for the rest of the phase based on whether you've cleared the fire and the Disintegrate debuffs. Moving on, we're going to be ready to bait our third breath. This third breath we bait inside. Nobody's clearing on this breath, which means that we just want to point it inside, and it's not too important. It just needs to not destroy the range because they're dodging new fire bombs right when this is happening. Next, we have the third Mass Disintegrate. We are still not doing our big clear here. There's one more Disintegrate after this that we're going to clear. You can see I am trying to make my line as small as possible so that way I don't clear any of the other melee and give them as much room as possible to dodge. I am also trying to dodge along the line. This Fire Swirly appeared. I could have taken a step back, but I decided to try to make my line just a little bit shorter because I saw that I would be safe here. You really don't want to get hit by these Fire Swirlies. It is very easy to get womboed by these during other damage events and just instantly die. One small note about this phase is that I'm constantly trying to keep as much melee uptime as possible, not only for damage, but because I'm also playing Anger Management. You can see every time I use Rampage, it's reducing the cooldown. In the center of my screen, you can see Wreck and Ravager, and these cooldowns are being reduced. And if you play well, you can get a whole 4 uses of Wreck and Ravager in this fight, in this phase 1, and that's really key for doing as much damage as possible as a Fury Warrior in this phase 1. So this last Mass Disintegrate, this is the one where we're going to do a big clear. We have one of our melee. If it's a melee in a range, then the melee kind of just points their arrow off to the side, and the ranged goes to the back of the pack, and everybody stands in a line to clear. This is a lot of damage going out. This is when I'm going to pop my second Enraged Regen here. And I also Rally. We have cooldowns assigned for a bunch of different spots. And then finally, there's a Glittering Surge right after that. We get in the Spirit Link. We're healing up, trying to just do as much damage as possible. One small comment, I used Avatar on pull. You can see the fight timer in the bottom right. It's 1:40 seconds. I could have used Avatar again here, but it's actually not a good idea to do that because you're going to get a haste buff at right after this phase. Right when stage 2 starts, you have that haste buff from being down under, which means that you will do a lot more damage when you delay it. and it won't cost you a usage of Avatar later. So Sarkareth's going to fly away. We all get a bomb. I go D-stance here just to reduce some of the damage. Not too important. This damage isn't going to kill me, but I'd try to help the healers out where possible. One quick note before I talk about this down phase. Just in terms of measuring your performance, on some of my better pulls, I would do almost 14.5 million damage in phase 1 to Sarkareth. So that's a pretty good target to beat. I wasn't able to do as much on this pull. Definitely less good procs. Not sure exactly why, but I've also seen Fury Warriors do as much as 14.9 million, but it really depends on how many Ashkander procs and other various factors that you really can't control in terms of how much damage you're actually going to do in phase 1. So now for this phase, I try to take this really simple. We're actually stacking a little bit away from the edge because we found that made it easier to collect our mind fragments. And as soon as these mind fragments drop, I just get one. Maybe I get one of the haste buffs. I think I get 2. Looks like I got 3 haste buffs, but really I'm just getting 1 mind fragment going back to Moon because I'm going to have more than enough time, especially with Heroic Leap, to collect 10 stacks and then come back up. Come up here, we all drop our second puddle. I'm going to use Leap early so that way I can use the run speed from Bounding Stride ahead of time. When we have a lot of stacks of the haste debuff, we already have a movement speed buff, so there's not a huge reason for us to delay using Leap. So I get 10 stacks. I got to 9 stacks, and you kind of want to just wait next to your last mind fragment at 9 stacks. And the reason is we don't want to come up too early. The boss is immune right now until our tank kicks him. And so our tank is going to go up a little bit earlier and then give us a 3, 2, 1 countdown. And that's what I'm waiting for here. And right when it happens, I'm going to walk in, get my 10 stack, and go back up. I'm going to go and I'm charging in. I'm instantly popping that avatar. I want to get the full value of the haste buff. I have 10 stacks of the haste buff going on. So I want to use avatar, which lasts 20 seconds with it. You can see my Rec Ravager, even though I used a 4th Rec Ravager in the first opening, I'm getting another usage right here, which is really nice because I'm doing a lot of damage to these ads. These ads tend to get annihilated because they're the first set and everybody has haste debuffs, or haste buffs. So I am attacking boss and just cleaving onto the ad. I do set focus to the empty recollection though. We have a kick order and a weak order that helps us assign kicks. You can see according to the note. It's the skull line, 1, 2, 3, 4. My character's titled W. I am the 4th in the kick rotation, and we have backups assigned as well. So I'm still cleaving off of Sarkareth. The boss does not do a frontal cleave in this phase, which is really nice. It means that I don't have to worry about it too much. It is a little bit annoying because you don't want to get parried. You can get parried by Sarkareth kind of a lot, and it can be hard because his back is in the blossom, so you kind of just have to eat the parries because it's going to make it safer for boss positioning. So real quick, if you get infinite duress, this is one of the mechanics that might go on you and you got to be ready for what to deal with it. This first infinite duress and all 3 of them for the most part, you just want to go back towards where the ranged is and like a little bit left of the ranged. The idea is you don't want to knock the melee into the Death Blossom and you want to knock the ranged like alongside the circle that they're going in the counterclockwise direction. So right after this does get dispelled, we did do it like a 3, 2, 1 dispel countdown, so it was pretty easy to react to. This, you have to make a decision as a warrior if you're either going to charge or leap back. Here I probably could have charged. I might have gotten a tick, but I think I would have gotten right along the tangent of the Death Blossom and would not have gotten an extra stack. That dispel gave me 1 stack of Oblivion. This is where a lot of damage comes from if people make mistakes. If you stand in the Breath, if you stand in Death Blossom, if you stand in pretty much anything, you're going to get an extra stack, and that's going to be a lot more damage on the raid, especially if a lot of people are making that error. So we come back. The ranged are baiting the Breath over to the left. This is going to spawn ads, but we're thinking about Death Blossom now because we want to spawn good Death Blossoms that don't corner our ranged, which means that we really don't want to follow the boss. We don't want to drop a Death Blossom right on where the ranged are. So I'm going to, instead of following the boss this time, I'm actually just going to switch immediately to this empty recollection. I'm going to go in here and I'm just attacking it, and now we're spawning these Death Blossoms. They're in a pretty good spot, and that's going to clear the buff on these mobs. All these mobs are going to be healed for as long as they're not in a Death Blossom. They have a heal that just doesn't go away. So it's pretty important to make sure that they do land in Death Blossoms at some point, which means that it's important for us as melee to bait good Death Blossoms. You can see I have 2 stacks of Oblivion. It's because I actually just walked into the Breath while I was trying to hit the empty recollection. This is one of the recollections that we didn't have good damage on some of the time, so I wanted to make sure that it definitely died. So I was trying to get as much uptime on it to it as possible. One other thing to mention about the Empty Recollection, in addition to it having that healing buff, it has this other buff that you can see. It currently has 3 stacks. At 5 stacks, it becomes unkickable. This means that one little micro optimization you can do is when it gets to 4 stacks, if it starts casting, just kick instantly, because it's possible if you try to milk that kick that it's going to go from 4 to 5 stacks and become unkickable. Second duress goes out. This duress is basically the same. It's going to knock us away. I do actually charge back in this time, so I get more rage because this guy is clearly outside of the Death Blossom. You can see for our range, it's pretty important for, like, if I got it as melee, that I would knock the range over to the other Warlock gateway, and they would all gate backwards. It's important for the range to all come back here very quickly because they're about to get bombs, and they don't want to drop bombs in bad places. Note that I also got another stack of Oblivion. That's from the Duress Dispel. So I should be at 2 stacks, but 3 stacks is okay. It's not the end of the world. Next, our range are dropping 2 bombs. Something you might want to watch out for as melee again. These bombs can sometimes be very close to the melee stack, and if you're too close to it, about 12 yards, you will get another stack of Oblivion, which is obviously not ideal, especially because if one melee is in range, and probably most of the melee are in range and getting extra stacks. So definitely be watching out for all these bomb drops and try not to be very close to them. After this next breath, it's the same deal. I'm just targeting the Empty Recollection. I'm just focusing this. It's, again, we don't have the haste buff from earlier, and I'm just trying to do as much damage as possible. You can see I got Wreck Ravager for the first, second, and third ad sets. I got it for every ad set. Roar, I just used on the first and the third ad sets. And then I'm also saving this avatar. I'm not using it right on cooldown. Again, I used on pull. I used when we came up in P2 with the haste buff, but I'm saving it again because, again, we're about to go down and get a haste buff and do a lot more damage. Again, I'm focusing. You can see my weak aura lighting up. That means it's my kick. Looks like the other kick assigned got it, which is okay. There's one more dispel. It's fine. I'm at 4 stacks. You can see most of the raid on the frames are about at 3 stacks or 2 stacks if they went down. But either way, the melee who didn't go down are all at 3 stacks. Except for me, I'm bad. I guess I got hit by one of the breath, but whatever. It doesn't matter too much. I'm at 4 stacks, ready to go down. Right here, we have a weak aura that tells us when to go in. There's also a tank doing a countdown, but we basically go in and we stutter step. This is going to spawn these death traps. In case it's not clear, every time you go down or every time a void bomb blows up, it creates one of these death holes. And if you ever walk into them, then you just instantly die. We're trying to stutter step so that we all spawn these holes and then kind of walk out of them. So I'm over here. You can see this heroic leap icon. It means that our evoker is using time spiral just before we go down. That means that we have a lot more movement here. Real quick, one small thing. I went back a little bit too far, but after we go down, I'm going to collect the first mind fragment. And then right here, I pause for a second. The reason I'm pausing is there's actually 2 timers that you need to respect when you're down here. There's the overall 20-second timer that you have to think about which is called minigame in some of the liquid weak auras, and it's the overall timer. But then also the first time you get a mind fragment, it sets a timer to 15 seconds, and you have to get another fragment within those 15 seconds. Essentially, if I got this second fragment immediately, then it might force me to come up when there's a whole 2 seconds left on the minigame timer, but that is not ideal because I don't want to come back up until after Ascension has spawned formations. One of the biggest issues that we had, or at least one of the issues that we had during progression, was people coming up a little bit early. You see it says don't come up 12.6. If you come up right when, like before this timer is up, you're going to spawn extra rocks, which is extra damage against the whole raid. Each formation, it'll also have like a puddle around it that expands slowly over time, and it's just generally pretty bad to get extra formations, so you can't come up too soon. All this is just saying don't pick up the second swirly until there's at least 15 seconds left or less left on your overall timer. Anyway, I delay, use my leap that I got from the time spiral, which is really nice, running around collecting these haste buffs, 6, 7, 8, try to leave that one and get 9, and then I'm going to collect this 9 and then go to 10. See, right now, because I delayed, these are perfectly in sync. It's 3 seconds left on both. Get the 10th one, go up, come up here. Here, I'm going to do a really specific warrior thing. So it's pretty obvious I'm going to use Avatar again. I mentioned that because we have the haste buff and we're going to need our trinket. But you can see in the bottom left corner, a weak aura just popped up above my health bar. That is Blessing of Autumn. Blessing of Autumn is one of the Holy Paladin spells that they can cast on their raid team, and it makes it so that their cooldowns recover a little bit faster for 30 seconds. The gist of it is you get 10 seconds of CDR. So your minute 30 avatar is now a minute 20 because you got this 30 seconds of autumn. And this basically gives you an extra use of avatar. You'll see it later, but if you pop exactly on pole at 540 after this, you'll have it at 710. And the boss enrages at exactly 730. So that means that you'll get, if you pop exactly on cooldown, you'll get exactly one extra avatar because you get Blessing of Autumn. Anyway, I'm attacking. I'm trying to cleave on these ads. You notice we don't have the Death Blossoms anymore, so these are just going to heal up a little bit more, but they also don't have the, there's no big ad to kick, so it's a little bit easier. I'm also being mindful of the tank frontal. This frontal will one-shot you if you're not ready for it. Ideally, your tanks just point it in the same direction every pull, and you can just know where it's going to be and not have to think about it too much, but it definitely did claim a few lives in our progression. You can see this is the first black hole that we're spawning. It spawned in the range. The range basically start on the left, drop a bomb, go to the right, drop a bomb, and then go to melee, and then we all soak. It's really important that everyone soaks this, including the melee, because you get 1 stack of Oblivion. We're trying to specifically get 5 stacks of Oblivion before we actually all go down. Not too much going on here. More Void Slashes. This is kind of like a breather moment. So you just did a lot of stuff, and every time he does Scouring Eternity, you can kind of just like take a second and just like relax. You got to watch out for swirlies. Sometimes one spawns like right in melee along the line. You got to dodge it, but there's really not that much to worry about during Scouring Eternity. Next is the hardest part of the fight, I would say. This is when you get 2 duresses. So you can see it's on our Enhance and our Boomkin, and we also have a black hole. This is really specific. This is also a lot of damage. Just dispelling these duresses does a lot of damage. So this is another place where I'm going to use my Enrage regen. It's pretty important that you use regen at this moment. And then I'm also rallying this. In addition to that, I am getting ready to Gateway. I am unfortunately too far. You can see our Mass Dispel is already, it's about to go off in 0.1 seconds. We have a bar, and I'm trying to hit Gateway, but I was in this particular pull, I was trying to not get hit by the swirly very hard. So I did not end up taking this Gateway. The rest of my raid group did take the Gateway, but because I'm a warrior, I can just leap over there, and then it doesn't really matter, and we're just fine. Here we're all going to soak the black hole. That gave us another stack of Oblivion. So again, just recapping, we got our first stack from the first black hole. That double duress, that's 2 dispels, that stacks 2 and 3, and then soaking this second black hole got us to 4. So we're at 4 stacks, and the goal is to get to 5 stacks and then all go down together with one of these swirlies, which gives us another 5 stacks. This also spawns ads. Notice I'm basically just using Wreck Ravager on cooldown. I'm not trying to minimax this and try to get as much damage onto the ads as possible. I'm just trying to do as much boss damage as possible. These ads are just going to die no matter what. Our raid group just has a lot of cleave. This third black hole, if it goes on you, it's kind of unfortunate because you want to get uptime on the boss to get more Wreck Ravager CDR. But if it does go on you, you just wait. It goes on our Holy Paladin. You get Spell Warding. He just runs out and just soaks up those rocks that we just spawned. So that's black hole number 3. Not too much going on again. There are these hurtling barrages. If you get targeted, just don't hit the melee. Just try to identify where it's coming from. You might be able to see them shoot across the screen in a second here. Yeah, like there on the top right or top left, you just saw the meteor go across. But basically just don't want to hit the raid. Again, Scouring Eternity, it's just like a moment to take a breather. You're just attacking the boss and he's doing nothing. Our healers are also pumping right now. This moment right here is kind of insane. We all have 4 stacks, and I said earlier getting 1 extra stack wasn't that important in P2. It's very important to make that not happen in P3. All right, this next black hole, we're doing a little bit of a trick here. So this 4th black hole is always sacrificed, but it's not really sacrificed because we are specifically having our rogue and our hunter do the second bomb in P3, and that means that they're going to come up. The thing about black hole is that it will prefer to target people who have 0 stacks of Oblivion. So right now, our rogue and our hunter have 0 stacks because they just did a bomb and then they came back up. For some reason, our evoker healer also has no stacks, but apparently we got lucky. We got the 2 out of 3 roll, and it went on our rogue. They just run out and they cloak it, and it's fine. This next part is the last bit of damage in the fight. I'm going to use Enrage Regen right here. I am going to take a lot of damage from this dispel. Plus, we have 4 dots. That's just the last big damage event. I'm just getting ready to get knocked. I'm trying very hard to not get hit by another swirly because I don't want to go to 9 stacks. And then I really don't want to land in this hole. So I'm just trying to make sure that I don't get knocked into it. I charge back in. Maybe it's a risky charge because you can see there was a moat literally right behind me that I almost got hit. And it would be pretty bad if I ended up going down, which would have happened there because I'm at 5 stacks now. But it didn't, so I'm not worried about it. Definitely be careful though right here. So right around this time, I am starting, so 2 bombs are dropping and our healers are spamming heals on them to keep it up. But I, as the melee, I'm basically the person who's assigned to identify which spark we're gonna land on and all go down. You can see in my raid frames, everyone's at 5 or more sparks. A couple people are at 6, which is not great. Not sure exactly how that happened. But the simplest way to say this is just that 634, just look for a sparkly. As soon as a swirly appears, it takes 4 seconds for it to land. And essentially, you want to go down before this ascension hits and drops rocks, but you need to be down during duress as well, because you do not want to deal with another duress. So right here, I'm looking, 634, looking, boom, I see a swirly in the bottom right. I'm gonna walk over here. I put a marker over as quick as I can. The raid group follows me. We all land here. Boom, we're all down. And literally all of us make it down, which is pretty nice, except for the one person who died earlier. And here I'm just taking a breather. I honestly don't take a great route here. I definitely should not have gone for this far one. I'm only at 6 stacks. I use leap here. It's whatever. I still make it back up top. I still get 10 stacks, but I probably could have come up a little bit sooner. You can see if I look at my infinite duress timer, it's at 4. And then boom, infinite duress goes out on this. And our paladin is saying, you can come up right now. And I'm like, okay. So I could have come up maybe 2 seconds earlier, but either way, it seems fine. One thing I'll just mention, be really careful when you come back up. This is like probably the most exciting part of the fight, because if everybody's alive, there's a really high chance that you're killing this boss. But if you just charge back in and charge straight into one of these death trap holes, you're just going to instantly die, and that'd be sad. So just keep a clear mind. Like, it's okay to get excited, but definitely got to stay focused in this last few, there's only 30 seconds left of the fight. It's important to do that. This last black hole is actually really easy. Everybody has 0 stacks, so everybody just soaks this and then walks out of it, and it's fine. We only have 1 stack. It's like no damage, and all of us are just blasting here. And then right here, I didn't point out at 540, but trust me, I did use Avatar on cooldown. And right when we came up here, again, we have stacks. I'm going to use Wreck Ravager and my trinket and a potion, and notice that I have a weak aura that shows me my Avatar buff. I'm going to have 8 seconds of Avatar when I pop Recklessness, and that's going to bridge the gap until I get to 710 when I get my Avatar back. So this is me truly getting the maximum amount of Avatar during this moment where I have the haste buff, in addition to getting that extra Avatar in P3 earlier at 540. But anyway, right here, I'm just blasting. These ants just die to cleave. There's one more Scouring Eternity. Again, it's kind of just a chill moment. There's 2 barrages that go out. We try to min-max that. You see our rogue left as late as possible. Those 2 people died. It kind of didn't matter. We're just blasting. Boss is dead. You basically want the boss to be, well, you wanted to be dead a little bit earlier, but we had like a couple more seconds after this point. But we hit him. We killed him right at 7:30, and it felt real good. It was a really good moment.